They say some moments arrive quietly without fanfare or warning, yet somehow manage to reshape everything you thought you knew. That's exactly what happened to me on an ordinary Wednesday evening in September. Before we begin, I'm curious. Where in the world are you listening from right now? What city, what quiet corner, what moment in your own life has brought you here? I'd love to know, because stories like this one remind us we're all connected by the universal threads of family, change, and growth. Let me take you back to that evening. I'd spent the afternoon at my colleague Maria's retirement celebration. Nothing extravagant, just a small gathering at her favorite Italian restaurant downtown. There were perhaps 20 of us, sharing stories and laughter over red wine and tiramisu. My daughter Emma had decided not to join us, which didn't surprise me. At 22, she'd recently graduated from college and seemed to be in that transitional phase where social obligations felt more draining than energizing. I hadn't given it much thought at the time. The celebration was lovely, filled with the warmth that comes from celebrating someone who'd dedicated 30 years to teaching. As the evening wound down and people began gathering their coats, I felt that familiar tug toward home, toward the comfort of my own space. The drive home took about 20 minutes through our neighborhood's tree-lined streets. Autumn was just beginning to paint the leaves in shades of amber and crimson. I remember turning onto our street, noticing the porch light was on. Emma always left it burning for me when I came home after dark. Inside, the house felt unusually still. Our small bungalow typically hummed with some kind of life, music from Emma's room, the television murmuring from the living room, or the rhythmic sounds of her working in the kitchen. But tonight, there was only silence. I set my purse on the hall table and walked toward the back of the house. A strip of light glowed beneath Emma's bedroom door. I tapped gently before pushing it open. She was curled up on her window seat, knees drawn to her chest, staring out at our backyard bathed in moonlight. When she turned toward me, her expression was different than usual, open, almost expectant, as though she'd been rehearsing something. "Hey, Mom." Her voice was softer than normal, carrying a weight I couldn't quite identify. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" I asked, stepping inside and leaning against her bookshelf. Emma pulled her cardigan tighter around herself. "Yeah, actually, I was hoping we could talk." Something in those words made my pulse quicken slightly. "Of course. About what?" She took a slow breath, seeming to gather her thoughts like someone about to dive into deep water. "About how I've been feeling lately, about both of us, actually." I moved closer and sat on the edge of her bed facing her. "I'm listening." "I've been doing a lot of thinking since graduation," she began, her fingers tracing patterns on the window glass. "About who I am, or more accurately, who I've been pretending to be. And I realized something today that I need to tell you." My throat tightened. As a parent, you spend years preparing for certain conversations about heartbreak, career struggles, life disappointments. But something told me this would be different. "What is it, Em?" Her eyes met mine, and I saw a vulnerability there that reminded me of when she was small. "I don't think I've ever really thanked you. Not properly. You've done everything for me. Raised me on your own after Dad left, worked 2 jobs to put me through school, sacrificed your own dreams. And I just took it all for granted. Like it was something I deserved rather than something you chose to give." I started to protest, but she held up her hand. "Please, let me finish. I know you're going to say that's what mothers do, that you didn't expect thanks. But that's exactly the problem, Mom. I've been so wrapped up in my own world, school, friends, my plans, that I never stopped to see you as a person separate from being my mother. I never asked what you wanted, what you dreamed about, what parts of yourself you set aside." The words struck something deep inside me. I'd spent so many years in the role of mother that I'd almost forgotten there was a version of me that existed independently. A woman with her own desires, fears, and unfulfilled wishes. "Emma, where is this coming from?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She shifted, pulling her knees closer. "I had coffee with Aunt Linda yesterday. We were talking about life after college, about figuring out what comes next. And she said something that stuck with me. She said, 'Don't spend so much time being what other people need that you forget to be what you need.' And it hit me, Mom. I've been doing exactly that. Living up to expectations, yours, my professors, society's, but never stopping to ask what Emma actually wants." I watched her face as she spoke. seeing not my little girl, but a young woman wrestling with profound questions of identity and purpose. But more than that, she continued, her voice growing quieter, I realized you've been doing the same thing. You've spent 22 years being my mother, being the responsible one, being everyone's rock. But when was the last time you did something just for yourself? When did you last paint? You used to love painting. Your easel has been in the garage for 5 years? My eyes began to sting. She was right, of course. I'd packed away that part of myself when she was a baby, telling myself it was temporary, just until things settled. But things never settled. Life just kept moving, and I kept moving with it. Always focused on the next task, the next responsibility, never stopping to reclaim the pieces of myself I'd set down. I don't know what to say, I admitted, my voice cracking slightly. Emma unfolded herself from the window seat and came to sit beside me on the bed. You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. And I think we're both at a point where we need to stop living for everyone else and start figuring out who we really are underneath all the roles we play. I looked at my daughter, truly. Looked at her, and felt something shift between us. This wasn't a child seeking guidance. This was one adult extending understanding to another. When did you get so wise? I asked, managing a small smile through my tears. I learned from watching you, she said. You taught me to be strong, to be selfless, to put others first. But maybe it's time we both learned something new. How to be whole, not just strong. How to be honest, not just selfless. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of her words settling over us like autumn leaves drifting to the ground. I'm scared, I admitted quietly. I don't know who I am without being your mom. That's been my identity for so long. Emma took my hand. You'll always be my mom. But you're also Catherine. You're an artist who hasn't picked up a brush in years. You're a woman who loves jazz music and old movies and used to talk about traveling to Spain. You're more than just my mother, Mom. You're a whole person, and you deserve to live like one. The tears came then. Not sad tears, but the kind that come when something tight inside finally loosens. How had I raised such an insightful daughter? And more importantly, why had it taken her to show me what I'd been denying myself? Over the following weeks, something remarkable began to unfold. Emma and I started having conversations we'd never had before, real ones, where we talked not just about her life, but about mine, about my fears and hopes and the dreams I'd forgotten I had. She encouraged me to join a painting class at the community center. I was terrified that first evening, standing in a room full of strangers with a blank canvas before me. But when I dipped my brush into the paint, cobalt blue, my favorite color, something ancient and familiar stirred within me. It was like greeting an old friend I'd left behind. Emma, for her part, began exploring what she actually wanted rather than what she thought she should want. She'd been planning to apply to law school because it seemed like the smart choice, the responsible path. But through our conversations, she admitted what she really wanted was to write. She'd been keeping journals since she was 10, filling notebooks with stories and observations, but had never considered it a viable career. What if I'm not good enough? She asked me one evening as we sat in the kitchen, her laptop open to a blank document. What if you are? I countered. The only way to find out is to try. And even if you fail, at least you'll have been authentic to yourself. I watched her face change as she absorbed my words I was still learning to apply to my own life. The transformation didn't happen overnight. There were setbacks and moments of doubt. Some mornings I woke up feeling guilty for spending time painting when there were dishes to wash or errands to run. Emma had days when the fear of pursuing writing felt overwhelming, when the safer path of law school seemed more appealing. But we kept each other accountable. We'd check in every few days, sharing our small victories and our struggles. When I finished my first painting in years, a landscape of the mountains we'd visited when Emma was young, she cried. When Emma sent her first short story to a literary magazine, I felt proud in a way that was different from watching her graduate. This was pride in watching her honor herself. One Saturday afternoon, about 3 months after that initial conversation, we drove out to the state park for a hike. The October air was crisp, the leaves at their peak brilliance. As we walked along the trail, Emma turned to me with a thoughtful expression. Do you remember what you said to me when I was little and I'd be afraid to try something new? I thought back. I used to tell you that courage isn't about not being scared. It's about doing the thing even when you are scared. She nodded. I think we've both been pretty courageous lately. I smiled, feeling the truth of it. I think you're right. We reached a clearing with a view of the valley below, painted in autumn's full glory. Emma sat on a large rock and I joined her. I got an email yesterday, she said. From that literary magazine. My heart jumped. And they're publishing my story. It'll be in their winter issue. I threw my arms around her, both of us laughing and crying at the same time. Emma, that's incredible. I know. I'm terrified and excited, and I can't believe it's real. She pulled back to look at me. But here's the thing, Mom. None of this would have happened if we hadn't had that conversation. If I hadn't stopped to question whether I was living my life or just going through the motions of what I thought life should be. I squeezed her hand. I'm so proud of you. Not just for getting published, but for having the courage to pursue what you really wanted. I learned it from you, she said. I watched you pick up that paintbrush again. I saw how scared you were at that first class. But you did it anyway. You showed me that it's never too late to reclaim yourself. We sat there on that rock, mother and daughter, but also two women who'd found the courage to become themselves. The sun was beginning to set, casting everything in golden light. I've been thinking, I said, about what you said that night, about how I used to talk about going to Spain. Emma's eyes lit up. Yeah? What if we went? Not right away, but maybe next year. We could take a month, travel through the countryside, eat good food, see the museums, just live a little. Her smile was radiant. I would love that, Mom. I really would. As we made our way back down the trail, I reflected on how much had changed in such a short time. I was still Emma's mother, that would never change. But I was also Catherine again, a woman with dreams and desires beyond the role I'd played for so long. And Emma was figuring out who she was beyond being my daughter, beyond being the good student, beyond all the expectations she'd carried. We had both been holding ourselves back, living smaller lives than we needed to. But in recognizing it, in having the courage to speak it aloud, we'd given each other permission to grow. That evening, back home, I stood in the small corner of the living room where I'd set up my easel. Emma was at the kitchen table with her laptop working on a new story. I could hear the soft tapping of her keys, a sound that had become as comforting as her laughter. I picked up my brush and added a stroke of crimson to the canvas. A new painting. This one of the clearing where we'd sat earlier. In the foreground, I painted two figures side by side, looking out at a horizon full of possibility. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give each other isn't sacrifice or selflessness. Sometimes it's permission. Permission to be whole, to be honest, to be more than the roles we've been assigned. That night, Emma gave me that gift. And in accepting it, I gave it back to her. We were both different now. Not better or worse, just more authentically ourselves. And in that authenticity, our relationship had deepened in ways I never anticipated. We were no longer just mother and daughter navigating prescribed roles. We were two people who loved each other enough to want the other to be fully, completely alive. As I cleaned my brushes that night, Emma came up behind me and rested her head on my shoulder. Looking at the painting, it's beautiful, Mom. Thank you. Sweetheart, you know what the best part is? She asked. What's that? We're just getting started. And she was right. This wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. The beginning of living with intention rather than obligation. The beginning of honoring ourselves as much as we honored each other. The beginning of understanding that love doesn't require us to disappear into our roles, but rather invites us to show up as our fullest, truest selves. That night marked a turning point. But the real transformation happened in all the days that followed, in every choice to paint when I wanted to paint, in every story Emma wrote because it needed to be written, in every conversation where we showed up not just as mother and daughter, but as two complete human beings who chose each other, day after day, and that, I came to understand, was the greatest gift of all. Not the love that asks us to be less than we are, but the love that invites us to become everything we were meant to be.